While Rich gets a little R&R, Erick Simpson steps in to fill the co-host role and discuss news from Barracuda and Bitdefender, some opportunities in Cmmc, the expanding importance of help desk and its responsibilities, a new way to look at Microsoft 365, and more. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 196. It rhymes with Mediatric. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly episode 196. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this program. For the folks like you, and who are you? You are the VARs, the IT integrators, the managed services providers, the IT consultants, to put it shortly, if you do technology, IT related things, and you do those things with other businesses. So you are in a business, you own a business, you work in a business that does this stuff for other businesses, you are in the right place. You know who you are because, well, I hope you know who you are. You've been living with yourself your whole life. And if you don't know who you are, there are many, many medical professionals out there who can aid you in that process. I usually would say here, joining me is my cohort in arms, Mr. Rich Freeman, but Mr. Rich Freeman is not here. He abandoned me, left me here all by myself to try and do, well, I'm not actually by myself, but Rich is on vacation, so he's not going to be joining us. But I am excited to say that I am still not alone. I have with me one of my favorite people on the channel. He's smart as a whip, knows everything. I'm always glad when he's on. He is the wonderful, wonderful, great Erick Simpson. Erick, welcome, sir.
Hey, Matt, thanks for inviting me over. Thanks for allowing me to provide you an assist so you're not all alone and speaking to folks that know who they are because they are who they are. And let's talk some tech stuff. Let's talk some IT stuff. Let's talk some industry stuff. I'm excited to get into it.
I can't wait to get into it as well. But before we dive into the meat of the show, why don't we give you a couple minutes here to tell people a little bit more about you, what you do, and stuff. Tell them the stuff, Erick.
Sure. Well, Erick Simpson. I cut my teeth in the enterprise. I'm a CIO, CTO. Back in another lifetime, I built out, staffed, trained, and turned over call centers and service desks for Fortune 1000 organizations. I got an itch one day, Matt. I decided, you know what? I want to do some of this stuff myself and be my own boss. So I started an IT practice in 1997, which I transformed into one of the first MSPs in 2005, grew that business rapidly, sold it in 2007, then co-founded MSP University and helped tons and tons of IT providers try to figure out what managed services was and how to, build those practices and grow their recurring revenues and all of that good stuff. Transition that into solution provider community several years later. I mean, we were doing boot camps all over the world. We were doing tons of webinars. I mean, there was a lot going on back in those days. I decided wanted to slow it down a little bit. I exited those organizations. Today, I work with IT providers and MSPs. I do coaching, consulting. I help them grow their businesses. I also do a fair share of work on the vendor and distributor side as well, Matt, helping vendors build or improve their channel programs, do sales enablement training for their partners and their internal teams, and just wake up every day excited to be a part of our industry and community. And I just love kind of that spirit of the go-giver, spirit, giving back and working with like-minded individuals, and just trying to inject a little bit of fun along the way, right? And everything, doesn't have to be so serious all the time, right? Like the Joker says, right? Why so serious, right? Have a little bit of fun, enjoy the journey as we go through it together. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing.
That's awesome. That's like the mantra of ChannelPro Weekly too. Like, why so serious? Let's have a little bit of fun while we do it. And while you were talking, I think I finally figured out what makes people like you, like this, with that entrepreneurial spirit to kind of like form your own business and do all of that work. And I think I figured out what it is. Frequent flyer miles. Yep. You start your own business so that way you can travel a lot and build up frequent flyer miles. So that way you can get free airline tickets to other places when you're on vacation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I won't argue that it's, it does help getting those upgrades when you fly frequently and, getting the early boarding and things like that. But, I don't know how things have changed in the last 18 months or so, Matt, because I have not been on a plane since, 18, 19 months, maybe longer. So I'm curious to see. I have continued to build up the miles though, using the preferred airline credit cards. So
naturally,
and the airlines have been kind enough to maintain status for a lot of us, right, through the pandemic and all this other stuff. So, but I have spoken with a few folks that have traveled recently, and I'm not liking the stories. I'm not like, it's like just crowded, and I'm here in Southern California, so my airports are typically either Orange County, John Wayne Airport, which is great. I love that airport. But sometimes when I need a direct flight somewhere, I have to go to LAX. And LAX is typically the nightmare airport for us down over here.
Yeah, that is a very busy airport. So you have not taken that inaugural flight since the pandemic started.
Nope.
But you traveled quite a bit previous to that, though.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The year before the pandemic hit, I think I spoke at between 30 and 40 events, I think closer to 40 events. So yes, I think all I was doing was traveling. I mean, it was tough. So I have adjusted my business model as a result. And now I'm appreciating things a little bit more. I'm not going to be quite as serious about travel in the future, right? I figured out that, like many business owners, and our ChannelPro's clients have figured out that, hey, we can do a lot more things remotely, right? We've been forced into this because of the pandemic. In fact, I was reading, doing some research for a session I did for a vendor about a month ago. They asked me to do a session on how the pandemic has changed buyers' behavior and how these business owners now perceive technology. And some of the statistics were pretty interesting. They said that they accelerated their migration toward the cloud 6 or 7 times faster than they would have had we not had to go into lockdown. They've definitely increased their security posture. And the majority of business owners that responded indicated that they now see technology much more strategically. They now are incorporating it much more quickly into their businesses. They are actually accelerating their move to the cloud faster, remote workforce optimization. And they said that a lot of those things that they've had to go through will stick in their businesses moving forward. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's accelerated these cloud migrations. We know we're going there. So, and having these clients really understand that they have to strengthen their security posture. I know we'll be talking about security today. I think, kicking and screaming, folks have ended up where they should be, and it was probably painful because a lot of it was reactive and we had to, but we've learned now to adapt and adjust. And it's, like I say, it's forced us to look at how we operate and what can we do that make things a little bit easier, not only for ourselves, but for our teams and our staff, right? Allowing folks to do a little bit of remote work here and there. I know that's a big conversation out there, right? In any industry, it's like, well, are we going to continue to allow them? And what are our policies around that, et cetera? And heck, who knows? We may be going into another phase of lockdowns here. So we may even, convince folks to lean more heavily on remote workforce, which creates great opportunities for ChannelPros.
Yeah, it's definitely been a good opportunity for ChannelPros. No doubt and as you said, it accelerated a lot of things. I want to get your take because everybody was very reactive going into it. How many mistakes were made in the I don't know, maybe not mistakes, but how many corners were cut in order to do it rapidly? And are you and other ChannelPros, are they kind of going back now and looking at like, okay, well, these are the things we did because we had to. Now let's fix the things that we probably shouldn't have done, right? Is there some of that?
Well, I think my perspective is this. I think that the ChannelPros that were already positioned to take advantage of the opportunity knocked it out of the park. I mean, yes, there was reactive. They pulled, battened down the hatches, all hands on deck. They did things. I'm not so sure whether a lot of corners were cut. I think it was, I don't know if anybody did something to just patch something up and then say, well, let's just get you up to this point and then come back later. I'd love to hear from our viewers and listeners. But what I do feel that I've seen is the other channel pros that weren't quite prepared from a maturity level in their business, hadn't really built those strategic relationships with their existing clients to the point where they actually trusted them and agreed to move forward. I think they suffered, right? So we saw a lot of channel pros thrive and grow revenues. I mean, a lot of partners I work with, coaching and consulting, were like, wow, this was record-breaking revenue for us because everybody was, everybody's ordering equipment, right? When we could get it, laptops, additional monitors. I know channel pros that were even setting up or assisting with home office furniture, right? Standing desks, ergonomic chairs and things like that, because this is now where we are working. And, you can't really do your job role sitting at the kitchen table, right? In the middle of the dining room, right? So doing that kind of stuff, I think the more transactional and maybe smaller channel pros had a tough time of it. And, I do know of a few that basically, shut their doors because another thing too that affected it was what verticals they supported, right? So some of the hardest hit verticals, if those were the verticals you specialized in, retail, oh my goodness, hospitality, you were going to get hurt worse than other channel pros that may have had a more diverse kind of vertical market focus, right? So there are a lot of factors in play. And I think for the channel pros that have survived and gone through this, it's forced them to look at the way they deliver their services as well, right? Maybe even, trying to diversify their portfolio of industry verticals that they're serving, right? To try to guard against, something happening to a particular vertical that could impact them as well. And of course, some of the basic best practices, not having, more than say 20 or 30% at the most of your revenue being represented by, just a couple of big clients, that kind of stuff, right? So it's caused everybody to kind of, to answer your question, what have we learned from it, kind of stepping back? I think it's more of that. It's like, how do I future-proof my business? How do I help my client future-proof their business from these unexpected economic downturns, whether it comes from a pandemic or from something else, right?
Yeah. So if you were going to put on your consultant shoes and someone was going to come up to you 4 years ago and say, 5 years ago, even say, I got a great idea on how I can grow my business, right? I'm going to go vertical. I'm going to specialize, and I got a great niche, barbershops.
Wow. And what's the is there a question in there?
what do you say to that person 5 years ago?
I'd say, well, you know what? Are you sure that's the vertical for you? Let's do a little bit of competitive analysis. Let's see what percentage of barbershops actually need IT. I'm not sure, beyond maybe a cash register, maybe a little POS there that I don't know if that's a sustainable model, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we want to serve organizations that are in growth mode, right? We don't want to serve organizations that are kind of flat or stagnant or even declining. I mean, how much staff does a barbershop hire a year, would you think, Matt? I mean, you're looking at those kinds of things, right?
But Eric, you're talking about growth. Hair is always growing.
Yeah, hair is growing. Yeah. Barbershops took a big hit during the pandemic. I know. I was doing, the Amazon shears myself, for a long time. So I got okay at it, but I wasn't turning any heads with my home haircuts.
Yeah. We're kind of making light of it too, but I do feel bad for for those out there who might have had a niche going with a lot of retail and a lot of salons and nail salons and, a lot of service businesses that really got hurt. So we're trying to laugh kind of with you and feel your pain with you, but hopefully things are getting better for them.
Yeah.
So last question, Eric. You said you haven't gone anywhere in 19 months. Do you have like that inaugural trip coming up? Are you thinking about going anywhere?
I do. I'm speaking at the Acronis Cyber Summit in October, so that'll be the first time I'll be on a plane, and that might be close to 2 years without being on a plane. So we'll see. I have a couple of other opportunities I'm talking to folks about, but that's one that's definitely booked, and I'll be speaking there, doing a workshop.
Awesome. Well, hopefully some folks will go and check that out. We're going to be in your neck of the woods in November, if I remember correctly. ChannelPro SMB Forum will be hitting the LA area. Are you going to be joining us for that?
I'm planning to. So that'll be great to kind of get the band back together. I haven't seen the team in a bit, other than on these kinds of chats, right? the video chats.
Right. And speaking of one that you also do, it should be important to note that you've been a guest on this show several times, and I love it every time you're on. But you do a regular show here with ChannelPro with Mr. Freeman. Tell people about that real quick.
Yeah, it's the ChannelPro 5-minute Roundup, and that's a weekly program where Rich and I talk about news, tips of the week. We do a business tip. We have a feature story we do. I give a business growth tip, and then we do a humor segment. And we like to say that it's done in about 5 minutes or thereabouts, but we get a little chatty sometimes. It goes a little long, but that is an audio podcast as well as a video podcast, and you can catch it on any of your podcatcher apps. So tune in and get a little bit of Rich and me doing our weekly 5-minute Roundup. And again, it's the most and the hottest news of the week we cover. And we have a little bit of fun doing it. So
yeah,
it's a great time.
It's a great show. I do recommend it. I do have a question though. Has any episode actually ever been 5 minutes?
I don't think so. I would be hard pressed. I think, So I think, between 5 and 10, sometimes we go over. I think the last one we went extra just to make up for Rich being, on vacation this week. So we did a little bit of extra on last week's podcast. So that one, I didn't time it, but I know that was probably one of our longer ones. But it was a good time. It
is good. No, it's a great show. I do love it. It's every time one hits my phone, I don't delay, and I usually prioritize those first. So everybody check those out. You can find more information about those on the ChannelPro Network website, channelpronetwork.com. Where we also have news and articles and other stuff, and we're going to talk about some of those. So what do we got in store for you today? We're going to talk a little bit about Barracuda and Bitdefender in the news. I'll put on my best Rich Freeman impression and try and explain the news as best as I can. I don't usually have quite the background that he does, but I'll summarize as best I can. We got a few stories that we'll touch on just to kind of get Erick's take, some stories that hit the site. We're going to talk a little about CMMC. We're going to talk about an article that Josh Lieberman, who's been on the show before, submitted, talks about looking at Microsoft 365 as an endpoint and what things you need to do to protect that. So I think it's a good one to touch on. We're talking about the help desk responsibilities, and that'll be fun. And then after the break, Eric and I will play a little fun game that we played a few episodes ago when the last time Rich was gone with Mr. Manuel Palachuk. We'll play that with Erick Simpson. It was a lot of fun. We got a lot of good feedback on that one. We'll put his knowledge to the test, and we'll do museum pick, tech pick, and all kinds of fun stuff. So Eric has no idea what's coming up, by the way. So I cannot wait to get to that portion of the story. So without further ado, let's roll into the news. So our first story is from a story about Barracuda, and they've added some Microsoft Defender antivirus integration into their RMM. So the new release, which is officially 12.4, it's immediately available. The Microsoft Defender functionality lets technicians set and adjust security policies for multiple endpoints right from the RMM. There's some existing functionality, I think, from Avast, so they're trying to take that and roll Defender, because a lot of folks are using Defender these days. It's very widely accepted as a great endpoint protection product these days, at least up with the best of them. So it's called Microsoft Defender now. It was Windows Defender until 2019. And here it talks about AV comparatives. They've tested very different ones, and it held very well. Gave it a perfect score. So you're starting to see a lot of IT vendors kind of plug in support for Microsoft Defender. I think Huntress does something with Defender, and now these folks do. So Rocket Cyber, I think, has been doing some similar things as well. So there's a lot of growth there. And includes some other new functionality as well. Some capabilities for Intronis backup users. It also had some patch management stuff that's in there. So all kinds of good things supposedly. Eric, I assume you looked at this. Anything in here that stands out for you that you want to comment on or bark at? I don't know.
Oh, I have comments. I mean, remember when Defender was like the opposite, right? It's like, no, we Defender. So what I'm saying is hats off to Microsoft for, getting Defender to the point where now it is kind of one of the top choices for not only channel pros and MSPs, but also for vendors creating these integrations. I mean, I remember the time when, all the competitors to Defender were saying, how much better they were compared to it. So that's kind of my first takeaway is like, holy cow, they actually, got focused and said, we're going to lead in this category. And now look at them. So that's kind of my first takeaway. And, another perspective is, in my work with partners and helping them, like for the last, 2 years now, Matt, I've really been focusing a lot of time, energy, and effort helping partners build out their cybersecurity portfolios. And what I do is, we create 3 bundles and we price those out, and then we teach the sales team how to position and sell on value and things like that. And, we always go from this, good, better, best perspective, and more partners are now selecting Microsoft services and solutions for these bundles, when in the past, again, it was, fill in the competitor to some of these things here, even from a mobile device management perspective. Lots of partners are using Microsoft Intune, right? When before we were looking at things like Duo and Jamf and other things like that. So it's really interesting to see Microsoft again, kind of, focusing and leading and gaining that market share and the trust and confidence of channel pros and their end customers. So it's a different world from, just a few years ago when I think there was kind of this gap in the perception of, the industry in terms of how qualified some of these solutions were. And that's why it created opportunity for these competitors. So I think Microsoft has done that 180 now, and now is becoming kind of the partner of choice for some of these channel pros in many categories in these solution stacks.
Yeah, does it speak to the types of threats that we now see out there too? It seems like a lot less threats are all about, exploiting the OS per se, but more about exploiting people. And then really your endpoint protection is just a system to try and figure out something's wrong and shut it down. And it seems like Microsoft would be in a good position to protect Windows, at least itself, because it knows obviously everything about it.
Yeah, I think the industry, the industry at large has matured. And I think we've gotten better at some of these solutions and some of the best practices and the guidance to secure applications, operating systems, hardware, perimeter devices, firewalls, and things like that. And I think you're right, Matt. I think once we've secured, these things with, software solutions and patching protocols and things like that, and hardened the security profiles of, some of these edge devices, the biggest attack vector is the users in the environment, are the users in the environment. So that's where we're seeing a lot of, what are the most successful attacks today? These are these phishing attacks, right? Where, and that's where we see an opportunity for vendors that do kind of that phishing simulation testing for end users, that do the end user security awareness training, right? So we'll launch some phishing simulations, and the folks that fail, right, they haven't identified that is not a real, email, and click on something, then go watch this video now and see what you missed and learn how to identify something that looks a little fishy. So we're seeing a lot of that. I think, some recent research I was doing for some other projects I'm involved with indicated that 30% of end users will click on a phishing email, 30%. So, I mean, it just takes one, right? It just takes one. And when I'm working with partners, helping them identify opportunities to sell hardened security solutions or bundles and things like that to their prospects, I always recommend that they do a phishing simulation for the users, because they always fail. Somebody always clicks on something, right? And that just helps bring that awareness to the decision maker that says, yeah, we need to address this, because at the end of the day, it's our people that, unknowingly will create an opportunity for us to get ransomed or hacked. And, now these cyber criminals are, they've always been evil, right? But now, Matt, before it was like, well, pay us the ransom or we won't unlock, the crypto lock that we have on your files. You'll never have access to them. Now it's pay us the ransom, or we're just going to put all of your data on the dark web. So they've even gotten more evil, right? So now it's definitely a very serious matter that needs to be addressed by, every business, on the planet. And, the channel pros are the last line of defense there. We are the folks that need to guide and influence these companies to take these measures to protect themselves. Because at the end of the day, I have this conversation a lot with partners and kind of guiding them through having these conversations with existing clients that may not want to, invest more to strengthen their security. And the position that I ask channel pros to consider is that not only are they putting their organizations at risk, but they're putting your organization at risk as well. I mean, imagine if you have 90% of your clients agree to, subscribe to your essentials, like your entry level, right? The minimum security package that you offer. Like, this is the minimum that we require for you to be our client, right? So we know we at least are covering the minimum stuff. And I don't mean that is, deficient. I'm just saying there's larger packages, right? Even up to, companies that have to adhere to regulatory compliance, right? So we're talking like a non-regulated small business, right? We're at least going to strengthen your email security, your firewall configuration. We're going to do some end user security awareness training. We'll roll in MFA, some of the basic stuff, right? Backup, et cetera. So you've got 90% of your clients that subscribe, and you've got 10% over here that don't. Well, guess what? When they get hacked, and in my opinion, it's a matter of when, not if, because these phishing attacks, it's a shotgun approach. They're trying to shotgun everybody's, because it works. Somebody clicks, right? 30% of folks will click. So now when they get breached or they get ransomed, the channel pro has to stop what they're doing for everyone else and go focus on that. And then potentially get caught up in, some sort of potentially, worst case, a legal dispute, right? Where now we're seeing that, right? That customer who we thought was a good customer now says, well, you didn't take care of this. You said you were gonna, because I think in those legacy managed service agreements and those old sales discussions, yeah, we're gonna provide security. What does that mean, right? Now it's real, right? We have to be very clear in our agreements of what we are doing and what we are not doing. And, if a client decides not to move forward with your security enhanced package, add-on, addendum, whatever to your agreement, you've got a tough decision to make now. Are you comfortable sleeping at night just having them sign some kind of a waiver, right? That says, I absolve you of any responsibility if I get hacked. Now that is a good sales technique, right? But sometimes it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So, is that enough? Right? Because remember, sometimes it's not the customer that's going to file all these legal actions. Sometimes it's their insurance company, right? That wants to figure out who they can sue now, right? And we're finding out that when an insurance company does pay out on a cyber liability insurance policy, which I highly recommend everyone get their clients to sign up for cyber liability. Don't resell it yourself. I mean, don't get involved in that, but just have a good resource that you can point them to, or have them have those discussions with their business insurance carrier. And then when they sign up for that, make sure that you're doing everything to ensure that they are in compliance with that policy in case they have to file a claim. Because that's what we're seeing now too, Matt, is an organization gets breached and the policy pays out, and then later they claw back because they do some research and go, oh, well, you didn't do X, Y, Z. So you were in violation of our policy, so we want our money back, or won't pay out the claim in the first place. And, one last point, I know I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but, for partners that sell managed security services, those agreements in no way can cover the cost of remediation. So we're just doing everything we can to put that organization in a stronger security posture to try to avoid some of those simple hacks and things like that. But if they do get hacked, right, even beyond what we're doing, because some of these guys are very sophisticated. We're all reading the same stories, right? They're getting very, very sophisticated and smart. If they want to hack you, it's kind of like if somebody wants to steal a car. I don't care what kind of alarm system and club you have on it, and they'll figure out how to steal it, right? So if somebody really wants to hack, they will hack. But now, when you're doing that remediation, or you have to bring in your third-party vendors to help with the remediation, how does all of that time get paid for? It gets paid for through the insurance claim process. So that's the other thing that a lot of channel pros have to consider is we have to have our clients have these policies, because who knows what that cost could be. I mean, we see numbers like, the average breach costs a company $180,000, $200,000. Now, of course, that's average over all of the breaches. But still, if you're a small organization, even a $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000, ransom, or the ransom and remediation costs, or the remediation costs on the PR nightmare, that will put a small business out of business.
Yeah, very, very true. And a good point about making sure everybody has the right insurance to kind of cover those costs, because it is very expensive. And we've even seen statistics too that says, a great number of small businesses that do get ransom hacked will go out of business within a certain amount of time anyway. Yep. But a lot of times it's the remediation cost that kind of sends them down that rabbit hole, because it's just an insurmountable amount of money in some cases. And while you were talking, one thing I do want to move on to the next story, but I want to share one thing with MSP. So it's great. It's great that we, all these businesses are working with partners to help them mitigate risk and give them the right tools and processes to try and not fall for phishing scams and that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, one of the more vulnerable parts of the population are seniors. And I know this is not part of the business world, but I would encourage those who run businesses, who have MSPs or shops or whatever, do something for your community to try and help educate, those not in business, like seniors, because I was just helping a close person that I know over the weekend who fell for one of those things, and, some nefarious persons enter all of her accounts and all that kind of stuff. And they don't know, they don't understand why Microsoft isn't actually going to call you and say you have a virus. And then, they allow the person to remote into their computers, but they just don't understand. So yeah, it's a really good thing if you can to outreach into the community a little bit, or talk to your parents, or just educate a senior on good security practices, at least the basics, because it would go a long way towards keeping some of the nefarious at bay and less funded to do other bigger things. So one other thing on this story that I did forget to mention is that for those who are using ticketing software from ServiceNow, which I guess a lot of the bigger MSPs are starting to deploy a lot more frequently now, in this Barracuda RMM update, they now integrate with that as well. So good features there for you. So go and check that out. This article is on, and all the articles we're going to talk about are on channelpronetwork.com. If you open up the show sheet on the site for this episode, we'll put links to all of these articles so you can go and you can read all the details because we're just kind of skimming them here. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can open up the description area. We put the links in there for you to go and get all of the extra details. So the next story, Eric, I think it'll be a quick one, and it's a story that I caught about Bitdefender. And the title was interesting, and that's what kind of got me reading it. It says, Bitdefender says rules are for breaking, which I thought was kind of an interesting title. And I'm like, well, what do they mean by that? So apparently this article that was written by Mr. Freeman, so hopefully he might want to comment on it when he comes back next week. But it looks like Bitdefender is willing to kind of bend the rules of their program so that way it's not kind of an all-in-one solution. And that way they can kind of tailor their program for the individual user. So what it says here is it's like, if you want to sell a one-of-a-kind software bundle that's tailored precisely to your market, they're listening. He's like, if it's a crazy idea, call me, is what he said. They were talking to Jason Eberhardt there, who's the Bitdefender Global Vice President. So like, if you call them and you want to work with them and you want them to tailor something for you, it looks like they're kind of willing to do that. So I'll send people to the article to kind of read the rest of this stuff because it's interesting things. But Eric, how many times do you talk to people who you consult with, and do you tell them to call your vendors and be like, hey, see if they'll modify their program for you? Do you try to have them get favorable terms like that? Like, have you ever seen this?
Yeah, not so much. I mean, this is pretty surprising. And, I will say that recently I've been working with a few new partners this quarter on some consulting and coaching, and more of them are partnering with Bitdefender. And I haven't really, dove deeply into that conversation. I don't typically ask why a partner chooses a specific vendor because, if it works for them, that's fine. I'm just helping try to, get them to bundle and price, profitably these solutions and packages. I mean, the vendor that you feel most comfortable with, that you've selected, if it works for you, great. But now I'm going to start asking the question, is it because they are very flexible and have this kind of open, conversation opportunity where, hey, let's kind of work together and we'll customize something specifically for you. It's very interesting. Now, part of me as, a business consultant says, boy, that's, how easy is that to scale, right? At some point, right? But the other part of me says, it's a unique differentiator, and I'll bet you that it's enough of a differentiator that it attracts partners even from maybe their current providers. So I'd be interested to keep tabs on this story as it develops. But I will be asking my partners about this specifically now that we're talking about it on this show, and get their feedback. But yeah, I don't typically ask or recommend or guide partners to say, look, ask a vendor to change their program specifically for you because you deserve it, right? What I do ask them to do is, go find out what kind of MDF opportunities they have, what kind of training opportunities they have, and what kind of sales support, things like that. But changes to a core program like that, I can't say that I've seen it delivered in quite this manner.
Yeah, interesting stuff, right? So go and check that out on the site, folks, and read a little bit about that, and maybe think about your programs. Most vendors, I don't think, are that flexible with programs or let you kind of buy into higher levels and tiers, but looks like Bitdefender does. Maybe that's something that you'd be interested in, or might serve to be a model for other vendors as they try to tailor things for their customers. So pretty cool stuff. All right, well, that's going to be it for news. We'll probably have a lot more news next week as Mr. Freeman gets back from vacation and kind of catches up on stories that we've that are kind of going on right now. Plus, we're recording a little earlier in the week too, so than we normally do. So some of the news probably hasn't happened yet, but we'll touch on those next week. We got 3 little articles I want to touch on real quick. It's to get Mr. Erick Simpson's opinion and thoughts about. The first one is an article from Mr. James Gaskin, who talks a little bit about CMMC and the opportunities that it has. So for those who are not familiar with CMMC, that stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Program that goes into effect October of 2025. It's going to be required that all 300,000 plus Department of Defense contractors and subcontractors and other businesses in the defense industrial base have to comply with for the appropriate CMMC level. So there's like 5 levels, I think, of CMMC certifications. They kind of they're cumulative, so they stack as you go up the tier. And there's a bunch of requirements. And anytime we get into regulations requirements, there is opportunity there. I would have to assume, right? Anytime that something's being forced, you have to catch up with that and do that. So the channel pros that who need to kind of get up to speed on CMMC have a high margin opportunity to help their customers. Says Mr. Kevin Beaver, who is an independent security consultant at Principal Logic, whether they're defense contractors or not. So all contractors have to be at least CMMC level 1, it says, and at levels 1 and 2, companies state they can follow like the basic intermediate cyber hygiene, respectively. And then levels 3 through 5 require audits, and those audit requirements kind of increase with every level. So there's a lot. There's a lot more detail in here, but we'll just kind of stop there. And Eric, are you talking with the people you consult with about CMMC? Are they excited about any opportunities? Are they worried about it? What are their thoughts on CMMC?
Yeah, it's interesting. And yes, CMMC is a big opportunity. And I do work with a few partners that are really focusing on that and are being very successful at having conversations. And I'll say this, I'll give this perspective. If you're not doing business with organizations that provide services to government entities and things like that, then this probably isn't something that you would spend a lot of time, energy, and effort in. If you want to develop that vertical, then you definitely need to focus on CMMC auditing. And as you said, Matt, there's 5 levels, and there are I believe there are dates between now and 2025 where these contractors that do business with the DoD and other government entities have to comply to these. And so, yeah, there's a lot of auditing. There's a lot of tweaking. I think the first level is basically getting a plan together, for these contractors. But I mean, this is all a result of what we talked about a few minutes ago on the show, the tremendous increase in, cyber terrorism that's going on, hacking, these entities and MSPs and even our vendors are being used as vehicles to hack these entities. So this is kind of the government's trying to, catch up, to the answer to kind of NIST, right, for DoD. So they're going to be requiring anyone that does business with the DoD. And I expect this to kind of just be a starting point, Matt. I expect this to kind of spread, as it grows to other areas as well. So it's a huge opportunity. If you're positioned to take advantage of it, I encourage you to do so. To try to build a practice that focuses on government and DoD and things like that, it's a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, it takes a while of all the verticals that I've helped partners through, working with, state, local government, federal government, and things like that. It's almost a different language. I mean, there's a whole different approach, dealing with the whole procurement process and who you have to deal with and how you have to do it. So it takes a lot of energy and cycles to figure all that out and become successful at it. But if you're doing business already, you probably already know about these requirements. And, if you're not leading that conversation with your clients, then someone else will, because it is such a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and Mike Semmel is a guy who's been on this show several times, and he's a big compliance expert and around certifications and compliance. And he's got some quotes in here that I think people will find interesting. So, and it's funny that you mentioned the word language, because a lot of people, like when they started to have to deal with like HIPAA requirements, if you go into like the healthcare industry verticals, there's a lot of terminology and a lot of vocabulary that you got to learn in order just to understand that business. But if you go through that effort, there's a lot of profit potential being able to do stuff for those businesses, because there's more rigorous overhead, you can charge more. And Mike says something interesting in this article. He says, MSPs are in a great position to help CMMC clients protect data and keep their systems safe. There are a lot of confusing terms in CMMC, but once you learn the vocabulary for that industry, like many did for HIPAA, you can succeed. In this case, success means as much as $25 to $50 more per user per seat to cover those requirements. That's a huge increase just for that. Like, there's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right, Eric?
Yeah, and I think that's from where I'm sitting, I think that there's even higher potential than that. And yes, Mike is my go-to security expert, Semmel Consulting. So yeah, he's featured in this article as well, and he's got his finger on the pulse of CMMC and compliance and security and all that. So whenever I need some guidance or want to bounce something off of an industry expert that specializes in security and compliance, Mike Semmel is my go-to.
Yeah, and I'm sure it won't be the last time we talk about it here on ChannelPro Weekly, and we'll probably try to get Mike Semmel on the show to kind of do a little bit more of a deeper dive into that. But there's a lot here in this article, folks, for you to check out. I encourage you to go read it. And then there's another link at the end of it that goes to another article we did about CMMC growing pains and stuff that you can kind of do a deep dive and get some hands-on experience from insight from those who are kind of in the trenches with that already. So good stuff. The next article that we want to talk about real quick is an article that was written by a friend of ChannelPro, who's been on also on the show before, Mr. Joshua Liberman. It's a really interesting article, and it's one that I wanted to kind of get your take on, Eric. So Eric makes a case for as Microsoft 365, becomes a bigger component of the workplace than it is for a lot of businesses, especially now with more remote workers and more cloud stored data, more stuff in SharePoint, Teams. It's causing a lot of the nefarious people out there to take notice and to do more to hijack and hack that kind of stuff. So Joshua lays out a case, that you should be protecting Microsoft 365 as like a new endpoint, right? Even though it's not traditionally an endpoint as you would think about an endpoint, but it's got, he says it's got the, where did that line go? We have to armor it, even though, there's a lot of layering of products that we need to do in order to do that. But Microsoft 365 has data that's being stored. It's got administrative tools that are being used with it as well. So that's kind of his case for why you should be looking at Microsoft 365 as like as its own endpoint and making sure that you're putting the stuff in place to protect that. So throughout this article, he talks about some of the things that you should be considering or looking at doing in order to fully protect a Microsoft 365 endpoint, quote unquote. And that includes some things, and he talks about some specific solutions. We'll touch on a couple of them here, but he talks about mail filtering and anti-phishing stuff. Like Microsoft 365 has some built-in tools that come native with the service, but that's probably not enough these days, especially given how many threats come through email now and how many phishing attempts that there are, as you said, with that shotgun approach. And you talked about the shotgun approach earlier. That approach is sometimes usually a little easier to spot, but the nefarious, when they really go spear phishing and they really target in on you specifically, it can be very, very difficult to detect that. And probably very high success rate for those bad actors. He talks about Microsoft 365 SOC services, about separate backup for Microsoft 365, which if you're not doing, you should, because if you think OneDrive is a kind of a backup of your data, it is not. If you get ransomed and it hits your desktop, it's encrypting your OneDrive stuff too if you have it synced down. So definitely have a separate backup for Office 3 or for OneDrive and SharePoint and those things. He talks a little bit about vendor sprawl in here. But I'll let you go and read on that. And he talks about monetizing and looking beyond 365. And that means kind of looking at security in a more holistic fashion and continuing to secure endpoints, network core, but all of the new perimeter that we have, especially as workforces become more diverse. So a lot in here. I mean, again, like we just kind of skimmed the surface here. But Eric, was there anything in here that kind of stood out for you? Do you agree with him in his assessment on Microsoft 365 as an endpoint?
You know, after reading the article, I really like what Josh has laid out here, and I agree that it's a unique opportunity to not only add value to every license that you may be the reseller for or the partner of record for your clients, but also to generate additional revenue and distinguish yourself, right? So I think I like the idea. And Josh, you know, he's you know, a thought leader, an expert in many things. I mean, I'm continually surprised to learn, you know, every time, you know, hopefully we'll get back together soon as we can travel. But every time there's a get together, I learn something new and interesting about Josh that I didn't know before. He's a worldly intellectual, I tell you. And I really like his approach here. And I think it makes it, you know, if you bundle it properly, it makes it easier to just do that add-on, right? And we talked earlier about, you know, other vendor services and solutions that we, you know, in the past, and this is what Microsoft is kind of evolving to, you know, compete against that and maybe close that gap from partners that have said, well, I want to use, you know, this advanced, email security package from fill in the blank vendor here on top of my Microsoft license. It also allows the partner to earn, you know, more profit margin, right? You know, from the 8 to 12% or whatever we can potentially receive from just managing these Microsoft licenses, we can add these additional portfolio of services on top. And then I just the idea of how he describes it as looking at it as another endpoint fee, I think makes it easy for channel pros to say, oh, wow, that makes it now, you know, I understand that. And it makes it easy to figure out how I could price it and make that add-on. And then, of course, adding valuable services to increase the security posture of these Microsoft services and accounts for customers is always a good thing.
Yeah. Should people look at other services like Google Workspace in the same way? Because I mean, it's, you know, it's maybe not quite as robust as Office 360, or I keep calling it Microsoft 365, but it's still
Don't worry, they'll change the name of it, and in a year we'll have to learn something different.
I know they both keep changing the names and stuff. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, should people look at like Google Workspace in the same way and secure it in the same way?
I think it makes sense, right? If you have a customer or client that's using whatever, you know, email platform, the hackers don't care what email platform you're using. They're going to use their same tactics and dirty tricks, right, to try to ransom you or hack you somehow, or, you know, whatever. So, or steal your credentials. So yes, no matter what email system, you know, we're using, we need to take steps to secure that against, you know, at least to increase the security posture. You know, I always, you know, think about, you know, age myself a little bit, but, you know, back, you know, when I was younger, there used to be this device that they'd sell on TV called the club, where they said, well, look, if you put the club on your steering wheel in your car, you know, it's bright red, and, you know, so a thief would walk by and say, oh, well, that car's got a club on it. I'll just go try to break into this car that doesn't have a club. Okay, maybe there's something to that. But again, we talked about if a thief wants your car, they're going to steal your car. But it's kind of the same thing, right? If we put more security measures in place, right, they can thwart some of these automated bots and phishing attempts and things like that. The organization that has those in place has a better chance of resisting, those attacks than someone that doesn't. So, layers, right? So defense and layers we always talk about.
Yeah, always good not to be the low-hanging fruit, because they say the same thing about like home alarm systems, right? Like put a home alarm system and you throw the sign in your yard, and then like the robber is going to see that and be like, well, you know what? I could probably rob them, but I'll go to this house down the street here that doesn't have one of those signs out front and just hit them instead. I guess that works to a degree. It has to, right? But the problem about the nefarious, though, is that it's not immediately obviously what layers of security you have in place. So there is no club you can put on your steering wheel to show those off. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff there for sure. And there's a lot in this article. I do encourage those to check it out. I think another thing that we could do, Eric, if to prevent yourself from like phishing attacks and stuff like that, just don't have email. And you're good, right?
Don't have email. Yeah. And don't have computers, just typewriters. If you need copies, you use the old carbon paper like my grandfather used to in his manual, typewriter.
Right. Protect yourself from the Microsoft print spooler and just buy one of those old Xerox machines and you're good to go, Carrier
pigeon, fax machine. When's the last time you saw a fax machine? Wow.
Yeah. It's funny. I think the last time I did have to fax something, but it has been a long time. I think it was like 8 years ago. I had to run a phone line to from my office to my printer has the fax capability in it. Yeah. But it's never, I never set it up because like, my God, who needs the fax stuff? But I can't remember what I was doing. We were applying for a mortgage or like, it was something like that. We were doing, like applying for something and they're like, you can't email documents. You had to fax them. And I'm like, I got to go buy like 100-foot phone cable because like, I don't have, it was just crazy. Yeah. And then luckily we still had like a house phone at that point.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you have a phone line still in your house today?
What's funny? I do. And we probably never answer it. We had it because, with the kids here, they didn't have cell phones. They both have cell phones now, but at the time they didn't. So it was kind of like nice, but now I kind of leave it because it's really cheap. I think we signed on with Vonage at some deal years and years and years ago. It was like $10 a month, for unlimited calling or whatever. And it's not a huge expense, but then it gives me a phone number that I can like give out and like let spammers just hit that. And then we let everything go to voicemail and we read the transcript of the voicemail and then we'll decide if we want to call it back or not. But so it's just kind of like my spam line to try and keep as much off of my cell phone as possible. But I do think it's one of those things that it's like, if we're going to cut a service in the house, like that's the next thing that's going to go is the home phone line.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we had a hard line in the house here. But yeah, I mean, now you want to fax something, you just do it with your phone. You can just, fax it, take a picture from your phone and all these apps just do it for you. It's technology. Got to love it.
Yeah, you got to love it. Yeah, faxing was that was like magic technology back in the 70s, and early 80s. And now it's like, it seems like archaic and dinosaur-esque, right? Like my kids don't even know what a fax is. Like I can say like, hey, you want to fax something? They're like, what the heck are you talking about, man?
Yeah. You remember those old black and white movies where it would be like some rich person that was reading the stock reports off the little ticker tape thing under the glass dome. I mean, that's, that used to be a thing.
It used to be a thing. The ticker tape domes. I need to get one of those. That'd be a fun thing to have in the museum. I'll have to look and see how much those cost and see what I can do. All right, we got one more story I want to touch on real quick because it had some really interesting numbers. And that is one about help desk responsibilities and importance expand. So I believe our managing editor, Colleen Fry, wrote this story. So she broke down some numbers based on a survey that CompTIA did. They surveyed 400 U.S. workforce professionals and respondents to the help desk trends survey report that say that the demand for tech support has increased for issues related to cybersecurity, securing networks, remote work from home, mobile device issues, and SaaS clouds. So here's some couple interesting things. So one, desired changes to make help desk more effective. They said 56% of the users said they wanted a better way to access the user system, better self-support resources, better procedures for hardware issues, and broader help desk contact options. It's also interesting that it's pointing out that the skills necessary for a help desk are increasing in a lot of those areas that I just talked about, like cybersecurity, software, and network support, whereas help desk may have been a little bit more endpoint focused rather than security focused back in the day. They're getting a whole bunch of new responsibilities. They're getting a lot more to see improvements in some various areas. And the survey also finds that more adoption of AI and automation in help desk operations is highly desired as well. So I find that interesting. Now, when you were working with your customers, are you seeing a huge rise in the expectation of what help desk personnel is? Are they seeing problems staffing them? Like what do you think of these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to, just kind of express what I think the priorities are from a help desk perspective for the partners that I'm working with. Yeah, number one challenge is hiring new talent and retaining existing talent. We are in high demand. There is a gap to be filled. The biggest one we always hear about is, the gap for cybersecurity professionals. But, in our industry, I mean, even before the pandemic, unemployment historically at record lows. And for our industry, we had level 1 technicians commanding comp, right? That was unheard of, 5 years ago because of, the need for these folks. So I think salaries and comp are at an all-time high. I think that companies are willing to pay those rates, which makes it tough for smaller MSPs and channel pros to compete for those resources, for those human resources. And it's making it hard to hold on to existing good technical talent because the opportunity to go make 10,000 more a year doing the exact same job, is a real thing. So I think, there's the people challenge. And then I think just going back to the basics, I mean, the folks that I work with have challenges with people, with their processes, right? Either their processes are non-existent or poorly documented or not documented at all. And they're just, every technician is doing, incident management their own way, kind of the wild, wild west. So there's no standardized processes. There's no standardization of infrastructure that they require for clients. So they're, supporting every firewall known to man, every switch known to, humans, all those kinds of things, all the different software packages. Their platforms aren't optimized and configured properly, right? So we kind of, get a PSA and RMM tool and we just, start using what we need immediately and then don't really leverage the potential that these platforms have for us from an automation perspective, from a reporting perspective. So I do a lot of work there. And then finally, products and services. What are we selling? What are clients buying? Do we understand our true cost of service delivery? And then add our desired margin on top of that and sell it, and how often are we analyzing that? And how often are we analyzing our service delivery performance to make sure that we're actually meeting those target margin requirements, things like that. So I think, the traditional challenges are always there: people, process, platforms, and products and services. I think the biggest challenge now is, in addition to kind of what I just described around hiring and retaining talent, I think it's also the change in the customer's needs too, kind of supporting that, work from anywhere perspective, making sure that as we're supporting those distributed workforces, that we're maintaining a high level of security. And I notice in the respondents of the survey here, that 56% of needing a better way to access user systems that you mentioned, yeah, when we've got people all over the globe now, maybe working from home, are we deploying, the solutions and the agents that we need to provide them that remote support that they need, and maintaining those VPNs and things like that back to the corporate network. So again, there's a paradigm shift in how businesses are operating now, more migration to the cloud. So we need specific staff that have that competency, right, to manage these cloud workloads and to speed those migration processes and really adopt that as part of our process, and then securing those things and then supporting these work from anywhere individuals. One thing I didn't mention during the earlier conversation around, the work from home paradigm is when we said, well, what did we learn from that, right? I think one of the things that we probably could also evaluate is, did we charge for that, right? Were those services outside of scope, or were they within scope of our services? Because I know a lot of, channel pros and MSPs, out of the goodness of their heart, kind of just said, let's get you going and we'll figure this out later. Now that's a real model. So do you charge differently for remote work forces and setups and maintenance? And then also the big opportunity that we saw was that co-managed IT opportunity, where in the past MSPs may not have been very successful at selling help desk support to internal IT departments in organizations. But when the pandemic hit, these internal IT departments were far from being prepared to support migration to work from anywhere and supporting those remote workforces. So we saw now a huge opportunity for these MSPs that couldn't sell those services before, now successfully selling and managing those services. So I think there's another opportunity to continue to promote those services to organizations with internal IT departments now, and just make, and I've been asked recently by several partners, do you have a co-managed IT support agreement that you could share with us? So I see us moving in that direction as well.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't know if you touched on that I think is important too is when it's so difficult to find the right people, especially with the kind of the new skills that are needed nowadays, as opposed to maybe even pre-pandemic. Training has got to be a big part of every business, every MSP's internal processes. Training has to be a part of that, because you have got to instill those skills and keep your help desk people up to date, and they need to be smarter than they were 2 years ago. Don't you agree?
You're absolutely right. And in fact, one of the motivators for our typical technical department, technicians, engineers, et cetera, one of the primary motivators is that thirst for knowledge. They want to learn new technologies. They want to get trained on new competencies. They want to participate in new emerging solution deployments and things like that. And if we're not offering them those opportunities, sometimes that's enough to drive them to look for other opportunities at a competitor or somewhere else, or maybe even in an internal IT department. And so that's, part of this, how do you retain good talent? It's more than just comp, right? It's delivering, opportunities for them to feel satisfied and feel like they're growing professionally, and also have a really strong succession strategy within the organization, something I didn't mention, right? If they feel like, well, the organization, I don't see where I can go from here because there's already people in these positions, and how do I go from where I am here, level 1, to maybe a project manager, or maybe a service manager, or something else? It's another exercise that I take partners through, is kind of, let's develop your, what does the organization look like when it's fully staffed? And, how does it look in 3 years? How does it look in 5 years? How do we build that accountability chart, borrowing from EOS? The concept of not an org chart, but an accountability chart, where all the roles in an organization are filled in. And then you may have lots of your staff that are wearing multiple hats, so their name can appear in multiple boxes in that accountability chart. So now that gives us an idea of how to forecast. It guides us in our decision of who to hire next, right? So do we eliminate, someone from wearing that hat and dedicate someone there? And then also have, the basic comp and the requirements for each of those roles, so that now you're coaching and mentoring your staff to say, hey, let's put together your plan for growth within the organization. And here's, tell us what you're interested in, and here are the opportunities for you to grow. Now, granted, Matt, some folks love what they're doing and don't want to do anything else. No, I love coming in at 8 o'clock, closing my 15, 18 tickets a day and going home at 5 and having weekends off. That's all I want to do. Great. We need those folks too. But for the other folks, that want that growth and want that opportunity, we should have a plan that they can work towards. And not only for retention, but when you have something like that in place, that's also an attractant for hiring those folks that aren't getting that from their existing, organization. It makes it attractive for them to come and talk to you. And now you have all this laid out. And that also helps in kind of, overcoming some of the, the hiring challenges that we have. Because if, nobody's going to lateral over to something if it's just the same. Now, they may last a little bit if they're just kind of, hopping to their next salary increase here and there. But ultimately, that's not going to fulfill their motivational need to learn and grow and meet their career objectives. So it's a little bit of art and science there.
Yeah, agreed. And you got to provide a lot of different types of training and other opportunities. You can't just throw books at your employees' heads and expect them to retain. Now, they also don't like it when you throw books at their heads. Anyway.
Yeah, some incentives could be, we'll send you for a week over here to get that training, or we'll send you to this, industry conference, and we want you to go through these tracks, that kind of stuff, right? That keeps it interesting and exciting for them.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, great insight, Eric. Really, really good stuff. I think with that, we are going to take a break. We don't have an interview lineup for today, but we're going to come back. We're going to play a little game, have a little bit of fun, and go through some regular end of the show features. Lots of good stuff ahead. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Ready to grow your business in ways you haven't even imagined yet? Tune in to B2B Tech Talk, Ingram Micro's global podcast, to hear what's next in the IT space. Industry leaders, subject matter experts, and more share their valuable insights to provide listeners with the best growth opportunities, with some interesting stories sprinkled in along the way. Listen, subscribe, and follow B2B Tech Talk wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, because it's time to imagine more.
And we are back with part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly. The great and amazing Erick Simpson is joining me here again on the other side for this part. We're going to have a little bit of fun. So Eric, I played this game with Manuel Palachuk a few months ago, and it was certainly interesting, and it's going to put your knowledge to the test. So everybody knows that like the IT industry has a lot of acronyms, right? Like tons. We know more acronyms, I think, in our industry than any other industry on the planet. Okay. But other industries have their acronyms too, and a lot of them overlap. So I have a little game that I want to play with you that's called, what else does that mean?
This is a PG show, so just keeping that in mind.
PG, yeah, family friendly show. So I have taken some common IT acronyms, and I have looked up what else they stand for in other industries. Okay.
Interesting.
So I'm going to give you the acronym. I'll give you a clue, and we'll see if you can come up with what the acronym stands for in said other industry. I will forewarn you, this is very, very difficult. and I got to tell you, Mr. Palachuk was all gung ho. He's like, oh yeah, I got all kinds of experience in other industries. He got like 2. So, and he was like, I'm going to get them all right. And he wasn't even close. So this will be fun. I'll try to make the clues a little more obvious than I did for him, so we can get them. All right.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it already.
This is going to be good times. Good times. All right. So the first one is SCSI, SCSI, which, as you all know, in the IT industry stands for what, Eric?
Help me out, Matt. It's been a while since I messed with SCSI controllers and SCSI adapters.
Well, it stands for the Small Computer System Interface.
Thank
is
you.
what it stood for. But if you are in the fishing industry and you were going to get a what would be a good clue for this one? You were going to get your information about there's a subcommittee. I'm going to give you the first two. In the fishing industry, what would this stand for?
A subcommittee in the fishing industry. So the subcommittee for sea. For sea inspection. I don't know.
You know what? I like it. I'm going to give that to you. It's not the right answer, but I think that's even better. Because this one said in the fishing industry, there is a subcommittee on statistics and information, but that doesn't seem very fish specific. So I like yours better. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the.
I almost went subsurface information, but anyway, okay. Don't give me any freebies. Come on now. These are hard.
These are hard.
Heck, I couldn't even get SCSI in our industry because I forgot it.
Right. That one was probably the hardest one. It was kind of vague and generic. All right. So you're walking through a hospital and you're going to pass a section, and on it might say PSU. Now, in our industry, PSU stands for Power Supply Unit, right? But if you're walking to the hospital and you see an area of the hospital that says PSU on it, what might that be?
I'm thinking post-surgical unit or prenatal surgical unit or something like that.
You're really, really close. Really close. Think of another P.
Pulmonary surgical unit.
Close. Think it rhymes with mediatric.
Pediatric surgical unit. I was close. Pediatric surgical unit.
Pediatric surgical unit. It is. Way to go. Way to go, Eric. Way to get that one.
Way to lead me.
I'm gonna skip the next one. We'll see if we come back to it. Here's one I think you'll get. FDD. So in our industry, this is not one I think. Well, you might get this.
Floppy disk drive.
Yeah, floppy disk drive. Okay, so if you had a little girl in, say, elementary school, the school might organize one of these for you to take your kid to, your little girl to. What might it be?
An event?
Yeah.
Female or feminine.
Dad taking a little girl to something at the school. What might it be?
Dads and daughters. Something. Dads and daughters. Focus on dads and daughters. Daddy and daughter. I don't know.
You're close. So, do you have a daughter?
I don't.
Oh, you don't.
Two boys. I have two boys.
You got two boys. So you never got invited to one of these.
I had daddies and donuts is what I had.
I love it. Well, my daughter's school did do this once, and it was a father-daughter dance.
Father-daughter dance.
Yes.
Yeah. Boy, I failed that one miserably. Everybody's laughing at me right now. How could you miss that? Yeah. Sorry. Don't have a daughter.
If you don't have one, it might not be quite as
That's
obvious.
also good at a wedding, I would imagine, right? The father-daughter dance.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That could have been another clue. I should have said that one as well. All right. Next one. This one I think you're going to get. DDR, which in the IT industry stands for double data rate. It's, some part of memory acronym there. Mm-hmm. But it's also it was a very, very popular arcade game in the 2000s that people were way, way, way better at than I was.
Stand up arcade game?
It was a
or a tabletop one.
stand up, but don't think traditional arcade. Think, it was a game that involved a lot of movement. That's the only clue.
Oh, Dance Dance Revolution.
Dance Dance Revolution. Did you ever play that?
No.
Oh my God. I tried once and I looked like a bumbling idiot on that thing. I don't have any like dancing skills.
I had enough fun watching people try to play it.
But there, like, if you go to the arcade, like there were some people that were really, really, really good at it.
Oh, I know.
They're like, man, their feet are going around and it's like, how?
Yeah, I'd watch them and go, it's kind of like this game, Matt. I probably wouldn't sign up to do this game because I'd just go, yeah, no, I couldn't do it as well as those people do it. So
I don't know how much time people had to put in to get that good, but there were some people that were really that good. All right, we'll do maybe two more. Okay, we'll try this one. I don't know. BIOS.
basic input output system.
That's one of the IT acronyms for it, for sure. So that's kind of what it means in our industry. However, if you were in Great Britain, they would have an institute of this. And I'll give you another clue.
If I'm going to phone a friend on that one, I mean, let's get
I'll give you another
Richard
clue.
Tubb on here for me to help. I don't know.
I'll give you another clue. So BIOS has has bio in it. Think biology. This institute has a biological purpose. You'll never get it, but it's still fun.
And it's in England?
It is a British
in England.
thing.
The Biology Institute of Biology Institute of, maybe the location is the last letter. I don't know.
Almost. The British Institute of Organ Studies. All right.
Sounds exciting.
It does sound exciting, doesn't it? I wanna go there and those people's brains. Okay. Here's one I think you'll get. CLI, which in our industry stands for Command Line Interface.
Interface, yeah.
Right. So if you were to call your credit card company and ask for
credit line increase.
Oh, he got
credit limit increase. Yeah.
Credit line increase.
That was an easiest one so far.
I didn't even have to give you a clue other than credit card company. Way to go on that one. You get bonus points because I didn't even finish the clue before you answered. So that's worth 10 extra points. And yeah, we'll calculate your score at the end and see what you win. Because you got that one so fast, we'll do one more. If you were at NASA and your job title could be abbreviated down to MCP, which in our industry,
Microsoft Certified Professional.
Microsoft Certified Professional. Yep, very good. But in this case, you work at NASA, so you're not a Microsoft Certified Professional. You are this.
MCP at NASA. Meteorological. Man, MCP. That's.
So what's
the master control program? I don't know.
Ooh, you're really, really close. But what? So if you're at NASA and the space shuttle's talking back down, not that we have the space shuttle anymore, but they're talking back down. What are they talking to? Come in.
Command protocol. Command.
Come in. What's the M? Come in.
Oh! I see what you're saying. The M. Mission control. Mission control.
Had it right.
What's the P? Mission control P. Mission control protocol.
Said earlier.
Mission control.
Pro.
I said it earlier.
They type stuff. Lines of code.
Programmer. Mission control programmer.
Mission control programmer.
Oh, yeah.
and just by figuring that out, you are automatically qualified to be one. Expect a call from NASA tomorrow. Fun stuff.
Awesome.
Okay, so we'll conclude there on a high note. Eric, your score is 7,496. You can trade that in for a cheeseburger at McDonald's the next time we get together. So
man, if that was only airline miles, that would be awesome.
Awesome stuff. Well, cool. Well, thanks for playing along. Hopefully everybody found that kind of fun to learn about different meanings for acronyms that we use every single day in other industries.
It was fun.
All right. I do have a museum pick and a tech pick for y'all this week. I noted the other day that I have like one hardware tech pick left that I can do that of stuff that I own. But I was rummaging around, Eric, and you know that I have like crap everywhere, and we've seen tons of it on the show, all of this old stuff that I just can't seem to part with. Well, yep. A lot of my stories these days go to, well, I was rummaging around in a box, or I was looking through my book. I came across like this manila envelope that had stuff in it. So I found something that's interesting. It's not necessarily hardware, but it is really old, and I thought it would be fun to talk about. So I found two things, only because they were both in there, because this is Windows 95 era stuff. So I happened to come across a Windows 95 with Microsoft Plus CD.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting about this particular one is the Plus component of Windows 95, which the Plus pack came out. Windows 95 came out first, and then there was the Plus pack that they added in eventually. One historically interesting thing is that was the first time that Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer 1.0, originally came out in the Plus pack. That was where it started from there, because that was when it was like their internet connectivity suite or something like that, they called it. And Internet Explorer 1.0 was part of that. So that's on this CD. So that's kind of fun. But I came across something else, and it ties into a lot of the stuff we were talking about today, because we're talking about Microsoft 365, and Office is like the dominant productivity platform on the planet. But I came across something that I honestly forgot about completely, and that is Microsoft Works. Microsoft Works. I got into it because the CD had like that certificate of authority. Like, oh, what's in there? And I opened it up and I'm like, I totally forgot about Microsoft Works.
The precursor to Office.
Yeah, and for a while it was actually sold side by side with Office. So it was like a lightweight. Originally, Works, if I know my history right, which I usually do, Microsoft Works was a lightweight, low cost productivity tool, generally aimed at consumers for use on lower power laptops and computers at the time that may not have been powerful enough to run Office, or that didn't need all of the features and stuff, because Office was a much bigger tool, especially as the two kind of got developed inside. And this was really low cost. So I think for a person, Office was $200, $300 back in the day to buy a license for a single machine. Microsoft Works was about $49, and it had most of the tools that a consumer would need. There was a word processing component. There was a spreadsheet component. There was a database access tool, which I thought was kind of a weird thing for Microsoft Works to have. What else did Works have, Eric? Did you ever use it?
I don't know if we ever used it, but was it, help me remember, was that something that Microsoft purchased? Was it some other company they bought and kind of reskinned? I can't remember now. Maybe our viewers will comment below and let us know. But I remember there was like those light versions of a spreadsheet, a Word, more like a notepad kind of a function.
It was actually something that they bought. There was an old. Yeah,
was it? I'm trying to think of like it was a database, more known like a database company before that. It was a Postgres. I can't remember.
It started in the DOS days, and I think it was somebody who was working on a productivity suite for the. It was supposed to kind of compete with Apple Works, because they had like the Apple Works thing on the Apple II. Yeah. And I believe they bought it. And somebody was working on it, and they bought it from them and put it on DOS. And it started off as like a very simplistic DOS program, and then they continued to evolve. I think that they evolved this program up until like the late 2000s. In fact, I think you can still download the last version. I think it was version 9 or something like that. But I stopped using it years ago because I always used Office after that. But it was interesting that they were really trying to target a tool specifically for simpler needs, because honestly, like Office really does more than most people need, especially at the consumer level. So it's kind of interesting, but it doesn't look like it's something they support anymore. Or do they just? But I guess with anybody with a Microsoft account has free access to the online versions of Word, which are of the Office tools, which are far more powerful than anything in Works. So interesting stuff. So I thought that'd be kind of cool. Did you? You never used it? Did you ever use?
I don't remember I think we installed it on stuff, but I don't think I ever used it at all. I always used Office myself, but fun story. I remember when they released Windows 95 and standing in line at I don't know if it was Best Buy back then. It was one of the other retailers that may not be around anymore, for midnight for them to open the doors, right, that night to go in and buy, Windows 95. That was, moving us from, Windows for Workgroups 3.11, right, to Windows 95. So that was kind of cool. You remember, Matt, they did a huge, just the marketing blitz for Windows 95 was insane.
It was, Matt. It was a really, really, really big deal. It was also a very, very big change for Windows, though, too, because you're right. It was like the Windows 3.1 era to the Windows 95 era. And that was from a usability perspective, from a UI perspective, from a software modeling framework perspective, it was a massive, massive change.
The start button, right? For the first time.
Yeah, that was where the start button came in for sure. It's where we also got lovingly acquainted with the blue screen of death, particularly with Windows 95A, which was horribly unstable. If you remember correctly, this particular version with Plus, this was Microsoft Windows 95B with the Plus pack. I'm trying to remember what else the Plus pack added, because they had a whole bunch of stuff that they slapped onto this, and I think they even sold the Plus pack too for a little while. I don't think it was a free thing, but it added, and I remember it added Internet Explorer. That was a big deal at the time. It added like a pinball game and themes, and it was back when Microsoft was trying to make. Well, it was when Microsoft was trying to make Windows, fun and usable for consumers. Now it's just a tool that we use, but it still works. It's still good. Excited about Windows 11? That's coming up. We never thought we'd see another version of Windows again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not, I'm not the kind of guy that, installs betas and things like that. I'm very, I need my stuff to work. So I know there's a big, kerfuffle about the hardware requirements for Windows 11. So I've been kind of keeping an eye on that, where you have to have, an Intel, 8 version processor, and some other things that
TPM 2.0 requirement is kind of an interesting one too.
So I guess,
I guess it's a security factor. The thing I'm most angry about, though, it looks really nice, like visually, but
it looks more like Mac OS to me now.
Yeah, it's kind of Mac OS-ish, and it's kind of like they took Mac OS and Chrome OS and kind of like smashed them together. But I do not like the requirement of having to have a Microsoft account to activate the home version. I think that's kind of crappy, personally. But that's the era we're in now. I mean, they want to know everything. They want our data. It's just their subscription model. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that personally. But we'll see what they do. It's not official yet, but I know it's rolling into new machines this fall, and then upgrades coming next year. So that'll be fun. But I don't want to go down the Windows 11 rabbit hole. We could talk about that for another hour. But we do a museum pick. My museum pick is Microsoft Works. I thought that'd be kind of a fun one since I found it digging through an old envelope. But I wanted to do when I do a museum pick, I like to do a tech pick. I usually do kind of a that was then, this is now kind of thing. But I mean, obviously, if I were going to do that was then, this is now, I would say, well, what would you use instead of Microsoft Works? Well, you would use Microsoft Office, but that's obvious.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, it's an easy one. It's obvious. So I was thinking like, well, if you were going to use a productivity tool, what would you want to use that productivity tool on? Because the computers of the day of Microsoft Works were kind of slow and they were kind of old, but let's say you wanted to get a new one, right? Like I want a nice new computer to run my Microsoft Works on, or in most cases, this would be probably Microsoft 365. So what would you do? Well, I would get something like this. This is the Dell Optiplex 5490 all-in-one PC. This is a in their business class desktops. It's got a nice look to it, very low edge bezel, webcam, everything's built into to the screen. A wide variety of configurations are available starting. You could kind of start them, I think, like this says $1,479, but I saw configurations as low as about $1,000. But you can go all the way up into, the 2,300 range if you start adding more powerful components, i7 CPUs and 11th gen stuff in there as well. So that is the Dell Optiplex. Nice looking all-in-one. All-in-ones can be nice for businesses because they're, kind of simple and there's not a lot of pieces to it. It comes with a keyboard and mouse, webcam. I don't know. What do you think? Do you have a Dell? Have you ever used a Dell all-in-one before, Eric?
I've not used a Dell all-in-one, but I just picked up the new M1 iMac. So that's kind of an all-in-one, right? Super quick and snappy. My question on your Optiplex pick, would it run Windows 11? Because I only saw an i7 processor option there.
Well, yeah, but it's 10th or 11th generation. So,
10th gen, okay, 11th gen.
So
that'll work.
I do believe these would be Windows 11 ready. I would have. I was
surprised. I was surprised not to see like the logo badging already, like Windows 11 ready.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think you're going to start to see that.
I hope so, because people are soon. Yeah.
I'd have to go looking through the tech specs. I would assume it doesn't specifically call out TPM, but I would imagine this has TPM 2 in it because it's like new, the 10th or 11th gen. So let's assume.
Yeah, let's assume. So interesting fact on these the new M1 Apple devices, because I also picked up a new laptop as well. In order to run any version of Windows, and I use Parallels, to run other operating systems on it, you have to use a special version of Windows, the ARM-based version, which I'd never run into before. But because this is an M1 and not an Intel chip, before we just run whatever, standard Windows you would run in Parallels. But because it's the M1 chip, you have to go jump a little hoop to download a very specific ARM-based version of Windows to install it in Parallels. So
how are you finding the software compatibility and performance in that? Because I've heard mixed things.
The biggest gripe I have is not with Windows running on Mac, but is the version of Office that runs on Mac. Right? It's kind of like Pulp Fiction when Jules comes back or when Travolta's character comes back from Amsterdam and he's talking about how things are just a little bit different, like, Royale with cheese, you can drink a bottle of beer in the movie theater, right? Yeah. With Office and the Mac, it's just like, even with Outlook, it's just different enough for me to like, man, I don't like it. I like the traditional Windows environment, Office apps running the way it's just different enough. Now, if I'd never run Office on a Windows, platform, I probably wouldn't know the difference, right? But I do know the difference.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a good move. Yeah. What else? He talks about what you put on French fries, mayonnaise.
Yeah, mayonnaise on French fries.
Office with mayonnaise. That's what we need. We need that mayonnaise layer to smear on Office on Mac just to make it a little bit better. Oh, fun times. All right. Well, generally this is where I would hand the show over to Mr. Freeman to give us what was then and this is now, or not what happened and what's coming down the pike with our in case you missed a post, but James Gaston has not written that in case you missed a post yet because it's much earlier in the week than it normally is. So you'll just have to tune in next week to see what might be coming because I don't know. And whatever it is, it's going to be good. I can promise you that.
That's a very compelling teaser. Tune in next week to find out.
Right. It's kind of like what happens in U.S. Congress. Like you want to read the bill, you got to sign it first, right? So you got to listen to the show to find out what's in it. I love it. Okay, Erick Simpson, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you had a good time. Thanks for being my guest in arms, my cohort today. And so I didn't have to talk into the microphone alone and feel like I was talking to myself. That'd be kind of weird. So I really appreciate that. Hope you had fun.
Had a lot of fun. Good times.
Awesome stuff. And for those who want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, learn about what you do, how can they do that?
ErickSimpson.com, ERICK Simpson.com. That's where you can check me out, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So link to me there.
Awesome. Hope they do. And thank you again. I can't wait to have you back. ChannelProNetwork.com is our website. That is where you go to get the latest news, articles, white papers, resources, downloads, all kinds of great stuff to help you grow your business, make your business more efficient, make more money, and stay on top of what is going on in the crazy IT industry, which is always changing. So you got to stay on board. Set it as your homepage. Go there each and every single day. And of course, subscribe to Channel 4 Weekly, where we cover the weekend news, when we talk about all the different articles, and we have great conversations and lots of fun. So subscribe everywhere podcasts are found. You'll find us in there, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. Just do that. Leave us a good rating if you can. If you like to watch, I do encourage you to watch if you can. We're on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit the red button and the bell, and then of course hit the like button on the video. It's right there. Just grab your mouse, hit the like button. It's not hard. It's not hard. Just do it quick. Okay. Hit the like button and leave a comment there. Talk to us. We want to hear from you. Lots and lots of fun there. Our email address is podcast@channelpronetwork.com. We're on all the socials, so follow us there. And of course, with that, we are going to say goodbye. I can't talk today, Eric. It's been a crazy day. Too early in the week for me to do this. I'm like off my game. But we're going to be back next week. Rich Raymond will be back, and we got lots more ahead. We'll see you then. Take care.